Well, hopefully you enjoyed his little presentation on emotional competence training. A lot of times these little promo videos don't tell us a ton of information because, they want you to buy the system. So, but I think it gives you a good little insight. So let's make a little bit of a transition here and let's talk about well-being. Warr's environmental determinants of well-being. There's a pretty good long list of things that he thinks contribute to a person's well-being. So the opportunity for personal control, the opportunity for skill use, variety, just by itself, like having variety, emotional clarity. I'm sorry, that was a little holdover from the last slide. I meant to say environmental clarity, valued social position, externally generated goals. That's an interesting one for a determinant of well-being. We'll come back to that. Availability of money, physical security, supportive supervision, and opportunity for interpersonal contact. So he thinks that these are the factors that will contribute to well-being of employees. And he phrased everything in the way that would be associated with well-being. So when he said externally generated goals, having your goals generated from something outside of yourself contributes to well-being. So some links to IO theory, some of the things we've talked about in the past. So the first 5 of the environmental determinants are all subsumed under job characteristics theory. The theory that says that these characteristics of a job are the kinds of characteristics that go along with job satisfaction. The next 2, externally generated goals and availability of money, those fall under the intrinsic motivation theory and reinforcement theories. And then physical security, that was discussed in Maslow's hierarchy of needs and then also in ERG. So there are theories that we've talked about already in class that are individually arguing for some of Warr's determinants, but none of the theories mentioned all of these things. And the supportive supervision and the opportunity for interpersonal contact, I would like to argue that interpersonal contact is part of Maslow's hierarchy, and maybe supportive supervision could fall under that too, but it's a little shadier. So I didn't grab Maslow's hierarchy for those, but I think you could argue that supportive supervision kind of satisfies those belongingness needs. Opportunity for interpersonal contact, again, belongingness needs. So, it's valued social position technically also falls under Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? Because then you've got esteem needs being met. So there's the point is that Warr is sort of bringing together a lot of elements that are kind of across lots of different theories, and not necessarily one theory covers all of them. The more determinants that are present, the less likely the employee is to experience negative well-being. And so a lot of research has been focusing in on what are called effective workplaces. And they look to see how many of these determinants are really present. And the more of these determinants that are present, the more effective the workplace is seen in the rankings. All right, so the conceptual model of work-family interface. Work-family can be in conflict, right? Work might be taking our attention right now and our family suffers. Or family might need our attention and work is going to suffer. That means that we've got a work-family conflict. There are ways also that work can enrich our family situation and that family can enrich our work situation. So it could be, that they detract from one another or that they could actually benefit each other. So there are variables that go into, work-family conflict and work-family enrichment. So all those things on the left. And then, of course, we have outputs from it. You're going to have impacts on the way that the person works, how satisfied they are with their job, things like that. And then well-being related outcomes, things that, will ultimately contribute to the health and the welfare of the employees. So this is our basic model of the work-family interface. They have found that personal and family variables and then work variables are associated with, I forgot what I put this box for. The box is referring to work-family conflict. So the top part of that middle box there, right? So we've got when there's a work-family conflict, and it turns out it really doesn't matter whether it's work interfering with family or families interfering with work. It doesn't matter which way that conflict is flowing. They're finding that if there's a conflict present, it is associated with less job satisfaction and with less life satisfaction. And you see that we have a pretty decent correlation coefficient in each of those cases. They're both above 0.3. They're both negative. So when you have higher conflict, you have lower job satisfaction, higher conflict, lower life satisfaction. All right. And then we have what's called the spillover model. So the work-family enrichment is positively related to physical and mental health. It's positively related to job satisfaction, and it's positively related to family satisfaction. So when our work enhances our family or our family enhances our work, we get those positive effects. We have a negative relationship between work-family enrichment and then problem drinking and depression. So people who have higher levels of work-family enrichment have lower levels of problem drinking and have lower levels of depression. So when we have work-family enrichment going on, we have this spillover of better attitudes at work and at home, right? Like when work and family are benefiting each other, it's benefiting the employee. So work-family conflict has been related to career satisfaction in women and especially in older men. So the more conflict, the less satisfaction. So notice it says in women and in older men. We're hoping that we're seeing evidence that this is kind of changing, that it's becoming just people are more satisfied with their career when there is lower levels of work-family conflict. But historically, men between the ages of 18 and about 45 they tend to experience less work-family conflict. They tend to feel less like the family is interfering with their work or that work is interfering with their family than women do on average. And so the more conflict that a woman is experiencing, the less satisfaction she's experiencing at work. Men in their prime, working years tend to not have that experience of conflict. And so it tends to not be associated, at all with job satisfaction or life satisfaction. Older men over the age of 45, they start to recognize that work is interfering with family or that family is interfering with work. And so we see this different outcome for the older men. With regard to the spillover model, people who identify and set goals, who develop and refine their strategies, and are flexible tend to perceive less stress from their job or their work. And so you get this work-family enrichment more often in people who have these characteristics of setting goals and being flexible with their strategies. You're going to see a lot more spillover and benefits of work-family enrichment in people who have that approach. Okay, I don't want to bog down too much on this. My most recent master's student who graduated in IO Psych did a really great thesis on work-family conflict. And so I don't want to bog us down too much, but I think I hit the high points of the research, not just hers, but the research in this area. All right, let's talk a little bit about what organizations typically offer to support a work-life balance. So organizational and supervisory support for family life are related to key stress and strain variables. If you have an organization and a supervisor who really thinks that your family life is important, it's going to lower all of the stress that could contribute to a work-life conflict, and actually might instead contribute to a work-life enrichment. But the flip can be completely the opposite, right? Where you have an organization, a supervisor who thinks that work comes first, and I don't care even if you have a family, that could contribute to work-life conflict and reduce that, spillover effect of enrichment. So some of the supports, I pulled this out of a previous edition of the textbooks. I don't know if yours looks like this, but so traditional benefits versus non-traditional benefits. Back when I was first in the workforce, childcare benefits were non-traditional. That was a new thing. But now it's become a traditional benefit. It's got, 35 years under its belt of being a benefit. And a lot of companies, like we've talked about before, have on-site childcare centers. Informational assistance is oftentimes, at least at the minimum, offered by companies so that people can find good local childcare near their place of employment, things like that. Some companies offer financial assistance or sick childcare. Like maybe they don't have an on-site childcare center, but they have some kind of system for when your child is sick and can't go to normal childcare, things like that. And so elder care benefits, same kind of setup, but because a lot of people in the workforce have elderly parents who they need to be taking care of. And so in a very similar way, companies are oftentimes supportive of that. At the minimum, giving information, and at the maximum, giving financial assistance. Another thing that was really considered non-traditional back when I was a young person, just starting out, was flexible work arrangements. Being able to have flex time where you could, like I was mentioning, coping with the stress of your commute. Getting to come in at a different time might really relieve that. And so flex time can be really important. Or for a lot of parents, if they have children, they might who go to school, they might need one parent to be there in the morning when the child is getting on the bus and leaving, and the other parent can maybe be home when the bus brings them home, right? So one of the parents needs to have a flex time job that starts at 10, and the other parent needs to have a flex time job that starts at, I don't know what would get you off by 3. I'm trying to do my math real quick, 6 a.m. But that kind of flex time, right? So that we can actually cover our work and our life responsibilities. Maybe part-time options or job sharing or some telecommuting, which I think is going to be a lot more common after this pandemic ends because we all found out we can do it. Leave and time off policies. I'm going to talk about that in more detail. And then some of the non-traditional ones that are becoming a lot more common these days, convenience benefits. You can basically live at work if you can go get your annual vaccination from the on-site physician, or, there's a dry cleaner in the basement, or, some organizations even provide meals at work and even take-home meals. Things like that. You got health promotion. Some companies will have a gym right there at work. Some will give you, some kind of reimbursement for belonging to a fitness center, things like that. Educational assistance benefits, housing assistance, group purchase programs. There are a lot of things that are sort of non-traditional that can make people's lives easier, and as a result, make them more committed to the organization. So let's talk a little bit about some of these work-life supports. Okay, so I've got the 2002 National Study of the Changing Workforce, which is a little bit old now, but the problem is a different group is now doing this study, and they're not producing exactly the same statistics. And so I'm going to stick with the 2002 data for now. So what they found as far as work-life supports really varies depending on whether you're in a middle or high income job or you're in a low income job. So they found that 79% of middle and high income jobs gave paid time for personal illness, and 54% gave days off without loss of pay for a sick child. Whereas with low income, it was roughly half as often they were given paid time for personal illness, and about half as often that they were given days off without loss of pay for a sick child. So as I'm sitting here in the middle of a pandemic, one of the biggest issues that we faced as the entire economy ended up having to be closed, and it wasn't really the whole entire economy, was it? Because a lot of our low income employees are the ones who were considered essential and continued to work through the pandemic, and were the ones who tended to get sick as it was going on, right? Imagine if you don't get paid time for personal illness, you're already low income. You might push through and try to work even if you're having symptoms of, in a regular year, the flu even, right? You might push through and make sure that you don't have to take a day off because you need the income. And so you can imagine in a situation like the coronavirus where, maybe people were having symptoms, but they didn't want to take the day off because they needed the income. And so, or you have a sick child at home and maybe other people are going to catch whatever your child has because you're coming to work, with your child in tow or something like that. So it's unfortunate the very lowest income workers are the very ones who don't get the paid time off, and are most likely to continue working even when they're not feeling well or when they, have a sick child and they have to decide what to do. Imagine your work-life balance issues when you have a sick child, you can't take them to daycare, you can't take a day off. This is an untenable situation for people in low-income jobs. All right, I'm going to take a break here, and we will come back and transition into a little bit of a family-friendly benefits discussion.